thank you so much for joining me. It's such a pleasure to have you on. I wish it were for different reasons. Obviously, conflict is not ideal wherever it occurs because people inevitably lose. Tell me what happened to India that started this latest round of what could still potentially turn into a war, but seems to have cooled off a little bit.
Right. I think you have to go back at least 8 decades to know the origins of this. Because when India was, when we got independence and when we got divided, there was one princely state that didn't want to join either side, and that was Kashmir. They had the choice; they did not want to join neither India nor Pakistan. But then, in about 2 months' time, Pakistan, with their militants and their military, attacked the princely state. And they got scared and they approached India and said, you know what, we'll join you guys, but protect us from Pakistan. That's what happened. So India went in to protect Kashmir, and then it went on to become a war, went on for nearly 14 months. And then the United Nations, back when it was effective, uh, joined in and brokered a ceasefire. And ever since then, every 1 or 2 decades or so, we would have another war on Kashmir. Pakistan still claiming for religious reasons that it's a Muslim majority state, supposed to be part of us. We want it, is what they say. So this was actually an extension of that. I mean, because for the last 5-6 years, we've never had a major terror attack in Kashmir. And one of the reasons I believe, or we Indians believe, that they decided to do this using proxies is because Kashmir for the last 5 years has been integrating well into India. Like if you look at the economy, their economy was doing well. In fact, last year they performed at 7.8%. The growth rate was 7.8%, which was higher than the national average. The number of tourists stepping in was increasing. It was close to 2.3 million tourists we had last year in Kashmir. We held an election in Kashmir. There was a 65% turnout, which is on par with the other states. And people were happy. You could see it on social media, and even the terror attacks came down by 85% from 2019 to 24. The attack and security personnel came down by 95%. So when Pakistan sees this, when they sense that Kashmir is integrating well with India, they just don't like it. And that's when they unleash a war using proxies. And this time they used a proxy named the Resistance Front. And interestingly, they changed the name. I mean, if you look at the past, they've always had Islamic terrorist groups like Jaish-e-Mohammed or Lashkar-e-Taiba or Hizbul Mujahideen. This time around, they completely changed the narrative. They call this an internal attack, and which is why they call them the Resistance Front. There's another organization now named the People's Anti-Fascist Front, so that it appears to the world that it's not an Islamic terror group. It's actually a group, a set of people within Kashmir who do not like to be in India, and they're just trying to liberate Kashmir. That's how it sounds like. But the truth is, it's another proxy supported and funded by Pakistan.
Are there people within Pakistan and within India that believe that they are not affiliated, or is it just accepted? It's more in the Western world that those lies may be more believed. Do people within know exactly what is happening?
Yeah, I mean, just look at India and look at Pakistan. I mean, we are a stable nation. We are a growing economy. In fact, we just overtook Japan to be the fourth largest economy in the world. We have stable elections. We are a democracy. We are doing well. And if you look at Kashmir's statistics for the last 5 years, just as I mentioned, it was a pretty stable state. And people want to be part of a stable state. They want to be part of a safe state, a growing state. And that's why Kashmiris are okay and they're happy being in India. Whereas Pakistan want Kashmir for multiple reasons. One is obviously religious reasons. Two, there are plenty of rivers in Kashmir which could act to their advantage if they gain control of Kashmir. And also it's a very strategically located site as well. It borders Pakistan, Afghanistan, and China. So they obtain it. There's benefits militarily as well. So to be honest, Indians, Kashmiris, they're happy living in India. But what Pakistan does to manipulate the narrative is that they develop proxies. In fact, they send in through tunnels, just like Hamas does. Through tunnels, they smuggle militants and they disguise as normal people living there. And then they start such groups like organizations, separatist movements, to show the world or build a narrative that somehow people are not happy there and they're resisting the authoritarian rule in Kashmir, or they're resisting the fact that India is trying to hold on to Kashmir, which is not true. Kashmiris, as you can see, are happy staying in India. They don't have an issue. And most Pakistanis, I mean, not the extremist kind, most Pakistanis also know that. But it's just the Pakistan government, the ISI, and the proxy groups that have a problem.
The Indian Prime Minister came out very strongly. His rhetoric was very strong, very tough in response to what occurred. And then the actions that followed seemed to reflect that as well. What is India's general stance on terror? And has it been consistent, or is it toughening up, do you think?
It has been consistent, but of late, especially in the context of the war, we already have Operation Sindoor in place. Now, right after the ceasefire, we started Operation Keller, which specifically targets terror groups, extremist groups, and separatist groups within Kashmir. And on international platforms and forums, you can find that India has always supported fighting terrorism. But I think the one thing that India needs to focus on more at the moment is establishing the connection between Pakistan and these extremist groups. Because although there is circumstantial evidence, when you see it, I mean, the world knows that. The world knows Pakistan funds terror group, and you see how they deny it. It's like in 2008 when the Mumbai attacks happened, uh, Pakistan stated that it had nothing to do with them. But eventually, when we caught the terrorist, Ajmal Kasab, he admitted that he was trained in Pakistan. He was trained by Lashkar-e-Taiba. When we caught David Headley, who was a Pakistani American, when he was caught, he admitted that he was given information by the ISI, the military intelligence agency of Pakistan. So people know this. But then when you go to international forums like the IMF, like the Financial Action Task Force, or the United Nations, or the Islamic Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which is like an Islamic version of the United Nations, they need substantial evidence. Evidence in the form of, say, they would ask questions like, did you catch these terrorists? Did you interrogate them? Do you have testimonies? Do you have proof of their phone conversations with ISI agents or chat leaks from their side? Have you traced the origin of
Terrorists aren't particularly good at keeping records, or their modus operandi would go against all of that, you would assume, in most cases.
Absolutely, absolutely. And which is why it's tough for us to figure that out, which is why we've started Operation Keller. So we would need all of these things. I mean, the weapons, we have to trace it back to the Pakistani military or Pakistani origin to prove that it has a connection. And we also know that there are many camps within Pakistan and, madrasas or trusts or charities that actually fund terror groups.
Yeah.
And we would have to establish that. And that's the one challenge that is lying ahead of India, because if we establish that, or once we establish that, then Pakistan gets into trouble. We wouldn't even have to go to war with them. Then that would mean that that would mean that the Financial Action Task Force would either graylist them or blacklist them like they did with North Korea. If that happens, they would stop receiving funds. And Pakistan, as you know, runs on debt. They run on loans. So if we're able to establish with the Financial Action Task Force that Pakistan is in fact funding terrorists, then that means the loans from IMF would cease, or the loans from the World Bank. The only country that would probably support Pakistan when it comes to loans, even in that case, would be China. But other than that, all the other financial support would cease, and that's what India wants.
So what is motivating Pakistan here? Is it disruption in the region? Is it the genuine want for Kashmir to be a part of them? Is it the Islamic extremism ideology that we see in so many other parts of the world? What motivates them to want to create this chaos?
I would say a bit of both, a bit of all the factors, because the proxy groups, they were created and trained for this purpose, so they badly want Kashmir. But I don't think that would end with Kashmir. That's one.
Yeah.
Two, yes, the terror groups, the terror movements, that's also a reason for that. Three, I think, and this is just an estimation from my awareness on international affairs, I think China would want Pakistan to keep attacking or irritating India, because they would want to neutralize the fourth best economy in the world and their immediate challenger, India. So I have a feeling that China keeps supporting Pakistan, maybe not directly, maybe not militarily, but diplomatically. If you look at the past, I mean, in the United Nations, whenever we have raised a concern about Pakistan, they have vetoed it, which means that China would want this to go on. So that there's also the China factor. So I think, yeah, it's a combination of all these factors. And as I mentioned before, religious reasons, they want a Muslim state to be part of them. Economic reasons, strategic reasons. You have mountains and rivers there, which would help them economically. And also strategically, if they were to go to a war, these mountains would be of great help. So they would want it strategically as well.
There are many similarities that a lot of people are pointing out between the kind of terrorism, it's the same Islamic extremism that those in the Middle East are facing, particularly Israel on the border with Hamas. Iran, of course, is the the octopus, the head of the octopus feeding all of its proxies. Do you see those same similarities? I guess the difference I would see is how the world treats India as opposed to how the world treats Israel. I mean, in some ways, there is unfair treatment, but the vast majority of the world seems to support your right to fight terror. What do you see as the similarities between you and Israel and the differences?
The difference is that we get treated differently. That's one thing, unfortunately. And even when Donald Trump, I'm a huge fan of Trump. I know that he's a president that stands for peace, and he's done it in his first term, never started a war. But even when he mentioned India and Pakistan, we kind of felt like he was equating us both as democracies. That's not the case. I mean, they're the aggressor. In some ways, we don't like calling ourselves victims, but in some ways, the other, we were the victims of the terror attack. So
absolutely,
yeah. So that's something that we feel.
And you can still be bigger and stronger.
Correct.
And still be a victim of terrorism. You know, it doesn't negate the fact that India was a victim.
Correct, absolutely. So I think that's one area that we feel that we're treated differently. But when it comes to similarities, the last 20 years, our border security forces figured out 22 tunnels in the border, similar to what Hamas has there. Second, is the proxy war. Just as you see in the Middle East, there's Hezbollah, there's Hamas, there's Houthis, and we here have, Pakistan here has Hizbul Mujahideen, they have Lashkar-e-Taiba, they have Jaish-e-Mohammed, now they have the Resistance Front and the People's Anti-Fascist Front. So it's a similar sort of strategy that Hamas and these proxy groups have. So yeah, it's similar in that way, but the difference is that we sometimes feel like we're not treated the same way as Israel.
Do you find within India, is the population generally united against this terror? And that sounds like a silly thing to say because of course they would be, but we see a lot of division within Israel in how to respond. What is the domestic situation when it comes to the way the government has handled this latest attack? And what do the majority of people want? Are they satisfied with the response? Do they want more strength? Do they want, what is the talk like in India?
In India, as you know, I mean, although it's a Hindu majority country, there are plenty of Muslims here as well. And one of the things that Pakistan wanted with the attack, if you see how the attack was done, they specifically took out Hindu tourists. That's what they did. They just asked, which religion do you belong to? The minute you say anything other than, if you say you're Christian or Hindu, they shoot you down. That's how they did this. So what they wanted was an internal conflict, that the Muslims in India would feel bad about this and there would be an unrest. That's what they wanted. But everybody stood united against this. And you can see it across, even left-wing media. We have a right-wing government. They completely supported the Prime Minister. People of different religions, they stood up for India, which was great to see. So in that case, Pakistan wasn't able to quite accomplish that, although that's what they wanted.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, when you look at the world and the way that so many have, and I say pretended, and I don't think it's all malicious, but those who march in the streets, thousands, hundreds of thousands, that appear to be supporting Hamas, a terrorist organization. They say that they care about innocent people, in Gaza, but for the most part, their hate for Israel and hate for Jews is much greater. Do you look around the world after 20-something Hindus were shot dead in the most callous, horrific way and wonder where all the marchers are? Where are all the people in left-wing universities in Australia, America, the UK? Why have they not taken to the streets in condemnation of what your people have suffered? Do you often look and wonder what the difference is?
Frankly, it's unsurprising. In fact, at the first retaliation that India made, I went through a news outlet, a left-wing liberal news outlet, I want to mention the name, and I was shocked to see how they had changed the narrative. So I don't exactly remember what they wrote, but it was something along the lines of, India claims to have attacked only terror camps and killed only terrorists. That's India's claim. But in Pakistan, 40 people died. And there were babies, there were women.
It is textbook, the exact same as what they do with Israel and Hamas. It is almost like there is a manual they are following.
Right, and we were sort of expecting that. That's also why I think India should establish the connection. They have to be able to establish the connection with substantial proof so that they can show the world and the international forums that this is what their narrative is. And it's not true because we have the proof. So I think it's time India act strongly and expose Pakistan and their connections with the terror groups.
So last question now for you, and I look at, is the war now done as you see it? Did we avoid horrific bloodshed, or is there a chance that it hasn't ended, that we're still in the beginning of a war, or what's the next step? What will happen next in this? Do you think both parties now, with the US involved with trade, will now just are appeased essentially? Like, what is your take?
Well, as far as ceasefires go, Pakistan has always violated ceasefires. From 2010, if you look at the data of the last 15 years, they've always violated ceasefires. But we think we are at an advantage largely because of the issues that are happening within Pakistan, because they have an economic crisis at the moment, as you are aware. A rising inflation, blackouts, rising debt, an unemployment crisis. With that, they have a lot of internal separatist movements that are intensifying as well. There's the Balochistan movement, who are asking for a separate state. In fact, yesterday, they came out on social media announcing Balochistan as a separate state. So that's intensifying on the one side. There's a Sindh area where they're also trying to frame another state called Sindhudesh. There's a movement called JSMM that is fighting the Pakistani security personnel. There is Tehreek-e-Taliban, who is attacking Pakistani police stations and military camps. And then there's a PTI, the opposition party of Imran Khan, who is using this opportunity to put the blame back at the government, saying we are already in an economic crisis. Why did you go for an unnecessary war? And even TPP, the Pakistan's People Party, which is part of the coalition of Shehbaz Sharif, has started criticizing them. So I don't think Pakistan is in a stage now to go back to war. However, there is one possibility. They might use the proxies again, because what India did was we made targeted attacks and destroyed many of their training centers and camps, terror camps. So we wouldn't be surprised if a month later one of these groups comes and attacks India, and Pakistan, as usual, would say, we have got nothing to do with that. It was just the proxy. It's Jaish-e-Mohammed. You attack their camp. This is what you would expect. That's what they do.
I know I said last question. I just want to ask you quickly, because when you were talking about the internal mechanisms of Pakistan, and we know that Imran Khan obviously is in jail, there's a lot happening. The majority of people in Pakistan, do you believe, want peace? And is it the extremist element? Or do you think most people would agree with what the government is doing, the ideology that exists, and the proxies who are acting on their behalf?
The truth be told, I think it has got to do a lot with the media narrative, because what we see in India, what we see outside of India, it's not the same narrative that Pakistan is. But
so they get fed that the government controls a lot of that media, the information, the narrative.
Almost like a mini version of North Korea. You get the information, one-side information. But having spoken to some very few Pakistani friends that I have, and that some of my friends have, they claim that they just want to live in peace. They just want a stable economy. They do not want war. They do not want to kill civilians. They just want to live a peaceful life. But about the issue of Kashmir, they're confused because of the narrative that the media in Pakistan pushes. But other than that, when it comes to war, I don't think a large majority of Pakistanis want that. It's just the extremists and the government and the proxy groups that want that.
Nirmal Abraham, thank you so much. You are brilliant. You explain that so clearly and so well, and I'm so grateful that you've given me some of your time, and please join us again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen. It was an absolute honor joining you as well. Thank you.
Legend. Thank